All right, another bye game in the books. Hello. Just talking over Iowa's win over Arkansas State Friday night. It's a bye game, so obviously lesser competition, but also an intriguing opponent. It's interesting. I said in the last video I didn't do much looking into this matchup with Arkansas State. Um, but you watch them play a little bit, and it's like they play a lot. It's kind of funny. It's like you watch them play a little bit. It's like it feels like I'm watching Alabama play, and then you do some research like, oh, their coach was at Alabama last year, and that tracks. A lot of isolation play, 5-out offense, 4-out offense, what have you. Random flare screens trying to give their guys little angles just to create driving lanes, etc. Testing you one-on-one. Not trying to either get layups, dunks around the rim, or three-point shots. Don't really want to sell for mid-range shots. An opponent like that it's tricky. It's a difficult cover at times, and it tested Iowa in many ways in this game. So it's even though it's a bye game, you can get a lot out of this and learn a lot of this if you're the coaches and players. And I think in a normal game where maybe Iowa maybe thought they were more likely to lose, I think they probably would have did this earlier. At the under 8 timeout, or around that area, Iowa scored a bucket to go up 10, and Fran immediately called timeout. And you hear, like, I heard just one person ran around me like, oh, why'd they call timeout? I think he kind of sensed that things were a little bit dicey. It's like, oh, this is a team that could potentially hit a couple threes because that's the way they play and make a quick comeback. So I think he sensed he had to do something to disrupt their rhythm. So around that under 8 timeout area, he decided to go to a 3-2 zone look, which is interesting. We went to a 3-2 zone look against Creighton to start the second half, and they got a wide open dunk. But again, we went to a 3-2 zone look in this game. We're not going with a 2-3 look for our zone defense this year. I'm not. That might be just matchup based. I imagine we'll throw 2-3 zones some point out there. But I think it was the right decision. It's probably going with a 3-2 zone would have probably been something that he would have did earlier in the game if we were playing a Big Ten opponent, given the way that Arkansas State was scoring on us at times in our man-to-man defense. And the zone changeup was a good decision because it threw off the rhythm for a couple possessions. But that being said, once they got that rhythm, Arkansas State moved the ball well. They were able to find some open shots, particularly in the corner from three, which makes sense. They did the kind of thing, if you watch the opening possession in that Creighton game, what Creighton did was just overloaded one side of the floor. They made one of the two players for Iowa playing on the baseline guard the corner, and it opened up a wide open dunk opportunity for whoever it was in that Creighton game. I forget who, to begin the second half. Arkansas State did a similar thing here. Found a guy, overloaded one side, found a guy in the middle, but this time, the other player playing back along the baseline for Iowa went to stop it, and he just kicked to the opposite corner for the wide open three. They got a bunch of wide open threes in Iowa's 3-2 zone look from the corner. But I think the zone mostly did what it was supposed to, which is throw them off a little bit just to give Iowa a little breathing room that we were able to win by double digits. But they did eventually figure it out. In terms of our man-to-man defense, I think I'd be lying if I said it was all bad, and I think there's some actually things I was a little bit surprised by how well they worked out. I wouldn't necessarily say it's necessarily positive, but just watching someone like Ben Cricky play, because a guy like that's really going to be tested in this way, because he's having to guard-oriented players, guys who are willing to take threes, guys who are willing to play off the bounce. It's a different kind of matchup than he'll play in just a standard Big Ten game, a standard game against a high major team, what have you. And I don't know if it said it went well. There were a couple times when he was closing out and he left his feet, not like to block a shot, but just like made a little hop And it's like, no, you don't want to be that. It's like when you make that little hop in the air, you're not able to change direction really quickly. If the guy decides to drive around you, that's what happened. He got drove around a couple times. But that being said, there were some times when he didn't close out well, it didn't come under control. And his guy did decide to attack him off the dribble. Pretty effective, actually, at altering shots. What it was 3 blocks? Or 3 or 4 blocks, if I remember correctly. Looking in the box score. Yeah, 3 block shots. It's good to see that. And it's good to see that he's capable of making the recovery and capable of contesting the rim against an opponent like this. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I didn't think coming in that his athletic range in terms of his wingspan, his jumping ability was going to make that much of an impact. And it's probably not going to make it much of an impact when we start playing high major teams with like guys at 6'10", 6'11" range. But it's nice to see that against a guard-oriented lineup, his length can make an impact in a situation like this. And he did a really good job. Like, we were employing our 1-2-2 press at various points in this game just because we had so many free throws. So we had plenty of opportunities to set up the press. Speaking of free throws, there were a lot of just like, it is like normally like I don't really count that many calls that are just wrong or missed, but it's like when you count more than, when you need 2 hands to count the calls that you disagree with, that's just like, oh God, it wasn't a good officiating crew in my opinion. But in fairness, honestly, like because of the officiating crew, their suckiness kind of helped us out because they gave us a lot of calls that maybe we didn't deserve, and that resulted in Arkansas State getting foul trouble, which kind of ruined their flow at times. So I can complain about the officiating, but honestly, the officiating probably did help us with the way they called the game. But anyway, who cares about that? So anyway, like a lot of times had an opportunity to set up our 1-2-2 press, for example, and a couple times Arkansas State was trying to beat us long, and Ben did a good job of staying alert, being ready for that full court pass, trying to get a quick layup, or even when Arkansas State had gotten a stop and they were looking to maybe push the ball really quickly in transition because that's the way they play. Did a good job of hustling back to get a steal, 4 steals, and at least 3 of his steals that I remember were all just him really hustling back and intercepting that full court pass. And it's great to see hustle like that from Ben. Not a perfect defensive game. I wouldn't have expected it to be against an opponent like this because, again, it's a real challenge for a guy like that because he's guarding guard-oriented players who are going to take him off the bounce, who are capable of shooting. But I thought, like, all in all, it's probably better than I would have honestly expected it to be. And so thinking about, I think it's fair to transition to Iowa's other center in this and how he defended the situation. It's kind of interesting. Iowa opted, when Owen came in the game, it was generally for either Peyton or Pat to go, and he would play the 5 position, and they would move Ben to the 4 position. It's kind of interesting they would make that choice in a game like this when you're playing a guard-oriented team. I will say, like, that was the finishing lineup, or not maybe even the finishing lineup against Creighton, but it was a lineup that they play a lot down the stretch versus Creighton, and it was actually fairly effective defensively against a similar, I mean, Creighton doesn't play like Arkansas State. It's not so much one-on-one like Arkansas State plays. But it's a team who wants to spread you out, shoot the ball. So similar-ish in that way. And it was actually pretty effective down the stretch of that Creighton game. And you saw them play here, and not so much in some ways. But I think, it was probably better than I would have guessed. The interesting thing about Owen, and I noted how Ben had 3 blocks, etc. And he was an impact around the rim. But it's kind of interesting. It's like Arkansas State, like, it never felt like they were really like shying away from that. And Ben stepped up to the plate and was able to alter shots, which is great to see. But it never really felt like Arkansas State was really shying away from that. You can tell going into games like Arkansas State was willing to go at Krikke. And the interesting thing that I just saw just like a couple times, just based on that, is like, it's kind of interesting when Owen was in the game. similar kind of vibes. Arkansas State would try and take the player one-on-one, and they might beat our player, but like when they saw Owens, like you can sense there was a little hesitation. It's like that's just kind of an interesting thing to know. It's like, and like you just think about it, it's like, okay, you can already tell like, even though Ben is making an impact around the rim, you can tell like there might be a little bit more respect for what they think Owen's capable of shot blocking wise. And I think the stats mostly bear that out. His block rate's what? I think 12 right now, which is, if you're above 10 for your block rate, that's really high. That's really good. So I think you can see, like, and again, if you've watched Owen throughout these first 4 games, like, really active hands-wise, really active getting steals on the perimeter, really active with his hands and ball screen defense, blocking shots. He had 3 blocks against Creighton, 2 blocks today. Or not today. It's not Friday anymore. Friday night. So you can tell, like, okay, like he's making an impact offensively. You can tell, like, teams are starting to be a little wary of him, and they're not as willing to attack him maybe as they would Ben. Although they did try a couple times, and Owen, he did reject him. But again, it's like I'd be remiss, and like I think this is important. Like, there's a real foul trouble issue brewing for Ben. Or, not Ben, Owen Freeman. So, currently amongst all Big Ten players who are playing at least 10 minutes per game, and I'm doing this through bartorvik.com. For all Big Ten players who are playing at least 10 minutes per game, Ben is currently second. He's called for the second most amount of foul calls per every 40 minutes. He's called for 9 fouls per every 40 minutes currently right now. The only player who's higher is Carter Gilmore for Wisconsin. And there's a big gap between second and third. So he is really fouling way too much. And it was, again, in like every single one of his foul calls in this game is just not the kind of foul call you really want. His first foul call is literally far away from defending our basket as you can get. Literally along the baseline, that's the complete opposite end of the floor from the basket that Iowa was defending. And it's going for a loose ball, and he's just not going to get. Just go back on defense. His last foul call, he had a mismatch in the post, and he just lowers his shoulder for no reason. It's just like, you didn't need to lower that shoulder. You're clearly a very skilled big man in the post. Just be finesse and finish over him. You don't need to be too crazy with like being physical. That's just unnecessary. And like, he plays with an aggression defensively, and it's great to see, because Iowa needs that impact. Again, Iowa, going back to a stat I referenced earlier, last year Iowa had the second lowest block rate of any team in the Fran McCaffery era. We haven't had a block rate as low as we did last year ever since Fran's very first year, when we didn't have much personnel at all. So like, shot blocking and having a presence around the rim was just something Iowa was clearly lacking last year, and it's getting better. Even through 4 games, you can clearly see Iowa has more of that. Even keeping the caveat of the competition in mind. But like, if you can't stay on the floor, if you're just constantly out of the game, like, it doesn't matter. And it's really important that he stays on the floor, because like, I can't emphasize enough. I mean, like I said in the last video, it's like I wouldn't be surprised if Owen works his way up to like first or second team All Big Ten when he eventually becomes a starter next year, or maybe 2 years from now. But like, you have to stay on the floor. The best ability is availability, and that's just got to get better. Again, you can tell it's like he's capable of guarding the perimeter. Like, there were a couple times when, like, okay, they were putting him in ball screen coverage, and he was able to push the guard out, get out in that hedge, and not allow the guard to turn the corner and force him to retreat. But like, again, you got to play smarter in some ways. And he's a freshman. He's still learning, and hopefully does figure that out, because if he can, like, man, like, he's going to be really, really good. Like, he's insanely talented. But it's just something he's got to work on. And again, it's like, so with the way Arkansas State plays, very guard-oriented, willing to take you off the bounce, testing you from the three-point line as well. it's kind of a game that exposes players who just really aren't up to playing that kind of game defensively. And again, I keep harping on this, but I think it finally reached a point where Fran felt like he had to say something because Lodgy just still clearly has a lot to work on defensively. And he's a freshman. You hope that he gets better. But there was a situation where it was a ball screen up at the top of the key. Peyton was the one guarding the ball, and Lodgy's man was the one setting the screen. He sets the screen, and the Arkansas State player rejected the ball screen, if I remember correctly. And Lodgy, but the problem with Lodgy is like he's just not in any position whatsoever. He's not really in a position to hedge if the ball handler decided to take the screen. He's not really in position to really. He wasn't in position to help if he rejected the screen. He's just caught in no man's land. And it led to a drive, and it led to Peyton's second foul, and he had to sit the rest of the first half. And both him and Peyton and Lodgy came at the same time, and Fran just clearly showed some frustration with Lodgy. And it's probably the first time where it felt like, okay, he's really like getting frustrated over it. And you can tell it's like there's been mistakes in the past couple of games. And it's starting to build to a point where Fran really felt like he needed to address something like, hey. And he wasn't like, it was like a little bit of anger, but I don't think it was like super angry. It's just like, come on, man. Like, you got to be better. With a little bit more volume, but nothing too crazy. But it's just like, you can tell it's like, okay, it's like there's starting to be some frustration boiling there, and he's got to work on his defense because, again, he's a really talented player. You can tell that. Really talented scorer from everything that I've seen through these first 4 games. And also a good passer. He's been really good in the high-low game, feeding the ball, whether it be to Owen or Ben when he's been in there. But he's got to work on his defense, quite frankly. It's like people make fun of Fran saying like, okay, it's like he doesn't care if you don't play defense, he'll leave you in there. It's like, well, it's like he clearly expected Lodgy to play better defense than he did, and he didn't, so he took him out. And I don't think he played Lodgy or really any of the bench players that many minutes. It was really a game for the starters mostly. But again, it's like Lodgy's probably the furthest behind defensively of any player on the team right now, and you hope he can eventually come around because we might need him. But again, it just kind of points out, it's like, okay, like against a team that's really going to test him off the bounce, like I just don't know if he's really ready for it yet. He is really going to be, his minutes played is really going to be dependent on the matchup we play. There'll be certain games where it's like, oh yeah, that's totally a game where I could see Lodgy playing. And when he's going to be able to hold his own defensively, he'll make a real positive impact on the game because his offense is there. And he's not hesitating in his shooting so far through the season. So moving on, I liked Iowa's defense at the end of the first half. And I made note of the lineup. It was DeSante, Tony, Josh, Pat, and Ben. And I think ultimately the reason why I really like this lineup is like you have your 3 best perimeter defenders out there. I think Josh was a little more shaky throughout this game than the other guys, but I did see some good things from Josh. There was one time where he did a great job contesting the shot around the rim, and he got knocked to the floor along with the player who attempted the layup for Arkansas State. So it was a 4-on-4 going the other way for Iowa, and he showed really great hustle to get back up really quickly and beat his. He got up from the floor faster than the Arkansas State player did, really well, and beat him down the floor and got a transition layup in a trail position out of that. And that was great to see. It's like, yeah, like that's the kind of hustle you want to see, like the watch you want to see. But he was inconsistent at times defensively, but still probably our 3rd best perimeter defender at this point. But I think you gotta like what you see from DeSante or Tony, particularly Tony, making impacts steals wise, block wise. Even the moments where it felt like Tony did get beat, he was able to make a recovery, make a block. And like Tony's pretty clearly separating himself as the best perimeter defender on the team so far, which I think you probably would have expected going in. And it was nice to see DeSante also able to apply some pressure, able to make some things work defensively. And he's come out with a great mentality so far this year in general. And it particularly shows on offense in this game. It's kind of, it's another funny thing. So it's one of those things I noticed where, like, it was early on in the second half where he got called for a foul and, like, just chirping the ref. And I don't care if people trip the ref. I think it's mostly funny, honestly. And it's interesting, like, as soon as Iowa got a stop and was able to get our transition game going, he just like fuck you, ref. I'm just gonna, like, you can tell he's just really, like, ticked off. He's like, I'm just taking this right to the rim and just scoring a and one. He did. It was a really tough finish too. He was great at finishing around the rim in this game. It's great to see him improve strength in this game. It was really on display, and I love the mindset. Really bringing it from that standpoint on both ends. Like, he's taking a great approach to the season. Didn't play as much as he would have probably liked last year, but he's not sulking about it. He's really taking a great approach. And his aggression attacking is great to see. And again, when you're playing a team like this, like, they were also applying ball pressure. You need your guards to be able to make one-on-one plays, and he did that in this game. Though for Tony, what I will say, we're starting to get to the point where it's just a little bit too much mid-range. So he's 6 for 18 from the mid-range so far through 4 games in the year, which is 33%, which just isn't very good. I won't say, like, okay, you can tell, like, he has some skill there. He had a really tough, like, fadeaway, spinning away from his guy. I forget the timestamp, but it was, excuse me, it was a really difficult shot, but at the same time, it's like, okay, you're capable of hitting that shot, but it's also a difficult shot. And not every mid-range shot he takes like this, he took like that one, or difficult fadeaways or whatever. But there's just too many times where it's like, man, like, I know maybe you're technically open and you could shoot this, but, like, it's one thing to settle for the mid-range shot when you're playing someone like Colt Brenner, who's 7'1", and is capable of blocking that shot. But again, you're playing a team in Arkansas State who doesn't really have what it takes to really affect your shots that much. Just go all the way to the rim, be strong and physical, and he can finish around the rim. So it's just, I feel like just, in the last game we were settling for a lot of mid-range shots, and I was okay with that because I think that was opponent-based. But if we're just going to start settling for mid-range shots against teams we shouldn't be doing that against, that's when I start being like, okay, come on now. Like, you have the angle to keep going to the rim, just go to the rim and either get fouled or finish through contact. You're capable of doing so. You're a really good player. Yeah, that's just a little nitpick. And if you look at the advanced stats right now, Iowa's ranks heavily in the amount of mid-range shots we're taking. Where is our shooting profile? Like, if you just look at field goal attempts, just like the percentage of field goals that we take from the mid-range area. So far, 21% of our shots this year are from mid-range. That's in the top 10% of all college basketball. So we're really relying on that. And again, it's one thing when it's someone like Ben, who is very clearly automatic from the mid-range. But at the same time, also, when you think about the shots that Ben are taking from mid-range, they're generally catch and shoot. He generally has space. Like, if you go back and rewatch that Creighton film, he wasn't asked to make that many tough mid-range twos. There was really only one against Creighton where it's like he was even on the move. The rest of his mid-range shots were all on the catch. But he hit a couple of mid-range shots on the move in this game. You can clearly tell, like, okay, that's just his shot. And has space to shoot that shot. I want him to shoot it, and I would probably say the same for Tony. Like, if you have that space for that shot, shoot it. But there's too many times where it's like, no, that's a slightly contested mid-range shot, or you can just keep going to the rim and finish around contact. I just don't like that trend. And I would also see Iowa maybe do more creating for others just out of that action. And that's not just necessarily tone. I would say that's like, it feels like we still need some players to really get that pass instinct, whether it be DeSante, Tony, Brock, like a little bit more creating and less shooting that mid-range shot when you get into the paint, driving kicks, etc., hitting the roll man, hitting the pick and pop, what have you. It's just not a trend I really like to see. Even though general offense has been good so far this year. And we do have players who can make mid-range shots. It's just sometimes like, I don't know about it. And it was just kind of an off night in general, and I don't want to react too much. And that's part of the officiating. It's really very choppy game, just a lot of foul calls, and just no real opportunity for rhythm. So I don't really want to judge too much the shot making for Iowa in this game. Like Peyton was just very closed off. He was missing shots left, right, short, long, whatever. Just not his day. Missing multiple free throws, which he just never does. Though I will say we were looking to post up Peyton a lot in this game, which is interesting. It'll be interesting to see if we try that going forward. Probably not. We had a size mismatch in this game. I just think Iowa was trying to exploit that at that time. So I wouldn't read too much into that, but it's just something, okay, I was looking to post them up. It'll be interesting, depending on the opponent, maybe we start seeing that to a certain extent going forward. Though likely not in Big Ten play. So a big positive, though, is I can finally take Ben Fricky off of Ben, take him off a right-hand watch. He hit a really clutch right hook late in the second half when it was still in the point where it's like, okay, the game was still hovering around a 10-point margin. The game is still theoretically in doubt. Hit a really tough right-hand hook over somebody. And again, you can still clearly tell he has a tendency to want to go left. There's times when even when he drives left and spins back right, he still tries to almost shoot with his left hand, even though most people would probably shoot with their right in that situation. I'm thinking there was one time, particularly early in the first half, where he caught the ball in the mid-post area or on the right side of the floor. And they were very clearly denying his left hand. So he initially went that way. And again, they were very clearly overplaying that hand. So he spun back right. And as he was going along the right baseline, he still tried to go reverse left hand. He got fouled. It wasn't a bad play. It was just like, oh, there's still just clear like he wants to use his left hand before he has to use his right. But he did hit a big bucket for us with his right hand. So it's nice to see that. Gosh, what else? I think again, like I wish there was a little bit more. And I'll keep harping on this. And I know Peyton Sanford had 4 assists in this game, so I really shouldn't maybe be harping on him too much. And he has he has a assist rate of 18 point something percent this year, which is pretty good. I just would prefer it to be higher. I would prefer it to be low 20s. He had 4 assists in this game, but it honestly felt like at times like, okay, it's like things aren't going for you so far this game. Let's see if you can maybe hit this guy for a pass or whatever. You're drawing a lot of attention. People are over you. Maybe just like move the ball. And again, I don't think he's selfish. I just think he has that scoring mindset. And he had 4 assists in this game, so I don't want to go too crazy about it. But it's like, man, it's still some. I just want to see more there. Again, not that he should be over dribbling and such, but making plays for people off of 1 or 2 dribbles, I just don't think is too much of an ask. And yeah, like just not many minutes for the bench players at all. But honestly, I just don't know if defensively they were all up for it. I think Josh is the most ready player defensively right now, which is naturally why he played the most minutes off the bench. It was pretty much a 6-man rotation. I think Price, like has that want to defensively. He plays with energy defensively, just not maybe the most athletic player. And Owen's just too foul prone. Logi just not really up for it, probably against this kind of opponent. Brock, defensively, there was one nice moment where he picked up a guy full court and managed to. He was in a position where they were inbounding the ball and the guy caught it and he was right there to either pick up a charge or travel, and they call it travel on that play. Showing good awareness there. I should most like. There was one sequence where it wasn't technically an assist or pass because he got fouled on this play, but he was driving along the left side of the paint, and he got bumped, and it was just an insane pass. He like flicked it almost this way with his right hand without looking, and I have no idea how he saw this open because the entire way he was driving that, I'm thinking like, okay, it's like given the way he's driving, he's probably going to see a pass somewhere along, either in the right corner for a three or somewhere along the right side of the baseline or whatever. And like, out of nowhere, and he was fouled, so this pass didn't technically count. But he just throws the pass right behind him to like the left elbow area, and it was right in whoever caught the pass, his shooting pocket. To go up and make a play with. It's like, how did he make that pass? Like, he really does make some insane passes. It's like, how do you see that, bro? Just also thinking of some funny things. So I was kind of talking in the last video about some maybe like body language stuff between Tony or Pat, which I didn't really want to overreact too much to because it's a tough loss in a game, and emotions can run high sometimes. But it was nice to see Tony connect with Pat with a alley-oop near the end of the first half. And they also did at the end of the game some weird thing where it's like, they were clearly doing that thing where like, okay, like they're giving each other the ball as the clock's winding down because they're clearly like, okay, like, are you going to take the turnover when the shot clock blows at the end of the game? Because they're just like playing the possession out. It's the end of the game. They're trying not to score. They're just milking the clock. But it's also like the shot clock isn't on, guys. So like there isn't going to be a turnover for this. So like why are you giving each other the ball as if you don't really want to have the turnover? And they were laughing about it at the end of it. It's like, okay, it's like everything's cool, and that's just kind of funny to see. And man, I nearly forgot about this. So I think everyone knows about the Francon chart. Where is it? And we got a material for the Francon chart. So this was so great. So I forget what the call was. I was incomprehensibly just laughing for like a minute after this. So just a full-on squat, fist balled up like this. You can imagine it's like he's taking a crap on the toilet and he's just like constipated. It was so great. Where would I rate it on the Francon chart? Just look in the Francon chart. Oh geez. Oh man, we probably have to go somewhere between a Francon 5 or Francon 4. That was just amazing meme material. It's one of those where you wish it was on TV because people had just gone absolutely ballistic. And I'm not sure. I haven't checked anything from one of the Iowa accounts from after this game to see if that did eventually find its way on social media or whatnot. But like, I wish it was on TV just so we could have that meme on replay. Because oh my lord, that was peak. That wasn't quite peak Fran because it's not FranCon 1 or anything. But oh man, that was that was so great. That was maybe the highlight of the game. But anyway, moving on. Not much to say. It really is kind of a tough game to honestly judge because really it was so choppy because of the foul calls. It's not free flowing. It's not the kind of game you really should take too much away. So I think thinking about the defense / hustle player of the game. Yeah, I gotta give it to Tony. He's tempering himself as the best defender on the team. Capable of making plays defensively. gives heart, gives hustle, plays with enthusiasm, plays with a smile. It's great to see. Not much more to say beyond that. It was a good performance from him there. He's the one guy who very clearly holds his own in this kind of game against this kind of opponent. Although there are other players who do have their moments as well. In the game ball, I think I got to give it to Ben again. Hit a bunch of clutch shots again in that stretch down the stretch where it's like, okay, it's like the game is hovering around 10 points and Arkansas State's still scoring at a decent enough clip where it's like, okay, they could potentially make this a game and like put some actual game pressure on us. But it just consistently felt like Ben was either, again, scoring in the post, scoring layups, he hit some mid-range shots from that 15-ish foot area on the move, on the catch. A very versatile scorer. Pretty much showed that all throughout the course of this game. He hit a lot of clutch buckets during the second half, just to keep them at bay. And honestly, his defense is probably better than I would have guessed it to be, although it was not perfect. And he would probably say that, but it was better than, honestly, I would have expected it to be in this kind of game. So I think he deserves the game ball, and he's had a really good start to this year. He's very fun to watch offensively. It'll be interesting to see if eventually we can start expanding the three-point line again. But again, if he's going to be automatic from mid-range, it's fine by me. So yeah, I think it's fair now to preview the next opponent. I won't be doing any videos for the men's or women's team next week just because like it's a holiday weekend and there's so many games going on at once, and you just kind of want to focus on family, honestly, during that time. So I just kind of don't want to do anything during that time. I'd rather spend it with family and just watch games just like normally as a fan. But previewing Oklahoma, not really much to say, honestly. And the issue with Oklahoma is like a very weak schedule. Not that Iowa's played a tough schedule, but at least we played Creighton. So at least there's something to go off of there, but Oklahoma's really just played 4 cupcakes. But there's still some stuff you can get from them from a statistics standpoint. So just kind of the most interesting thing that I saw from them in terms of what they are defensively, it's really interesting. And Porter Moser, current coach in Oklahoma, was the coach of those Loyola Chicago teams that made runs in the NCAA tournament to the Final Four, etc. And the backbone of those Loyola teams was playing a half-court oriented game and playing really good defense, and some good individual scorers, and like, what was it, Clayton Custer, I believe, who was an Iowa State transfer, went to Loyola. But his teams were really built around defense. That's how they won games. It's just kind of interesting. So if you look in the amount of shots that they're allowing in the paint area, they're allowing a high percentage of paint twos. Currently, 4th percentile in terms of paint two field goal allowed percentage, meaning like they're one of the worst. I guess they would be in the bottom 5% in like allowing teams to get shots around the rim or in the paint area, which is very interesting. So like, and again, you keep in mind, like they're playing bye games. They're not playing really difficult competition. So like, I wouldn't know that without watching the game. It's like, okay, like are they playing really guard-oriented teams who are just capable beyond the dribble, or are they playing some teams who are heavy in the post for some reason amongst those teams? You wouldn't anticipate that from mid-majors, but it's just kind of interesting. Like they're allowing a lot of shots around the rim, and the good news, I guess, for Oklahoma is they're doing a good job of defending the rim. They're only allowing teams to shoot 30% in the paint area, and that's a really good percentage. And so you just think about it, it's like, okay, it's like, what do they have from a shot blocking standpoint? Because like that's either like they have a lot going shot blocking wise, or it's honestly maybe you can mark it fluky. And honestly, just like looking at it, it's like I would honestly lean towards it being kind of fluky, because if you look at last year's stats for Oklahoma, they did not rank really highly in block rate or anything. They were middle of the pack in block rate, and the player who's really making an impact for them blocking shots so far this year, this Sam Godwin player, who's averaging 2, like he hasn't averaged over a block per game in his entire previous 3 years. Even when he was at Wofford, he didn't average one block in major conference. So I honestly think that seems kind of fluky. And a part of me just thinking like, okay, that seems like it's bound for regression in the sense that teams are going to start making more shots around the rim against them. I think there's probably going to be opportunities had for guys like Ben or Owen scoring in the paint. And again, like instead of settling for mid-range shots, keep attacking the rim. I think there's something to be had there, and I think we can get Oklahoma in that way. And also just like referencing shotquality.com, just in terms of the kind of shot quality Oklahoma's getting throughout this course of the year, they currently rank 185th in adjusted offense shot quality. So they're not necessarily generating really good looks either right now on offense. I will say they are 29th, or is that updated? No, they're currently 28th in KenPom, and they're 40th in adjusted offense, KenPom, 27th in adjusted defense. They play a middling pace in the 200s, but it's also like there's some signs that like there's a little bit of fool's gold here with Oklahoma, but again, I don't know. I haven't watched them play, and honestly, they're not a team I really watch a whole lot because they haven't really been relevant to the NCAA tournament that under Porter Moser yet. So there's really been no reason to really watch them. It's just kind of interesting. I'm like, okay, so there's some signs that this is kind of seems fragile and it might be a little bit fool's gold. But again, who knows? They might be really good. I don't know for sure. It's a fairly balanced scoring team so far again. And looking at their roster and compared to this year and last year, it looks like they brought in a couple transfers. There's not that much carryover. So I'm not really sure what to expect totally from a scoring standpoint. It's just kind of interesting. Like, okay, there might be some fragility defensively in allowing shots around the rim. But again, it remains to be seen. It's just interesting that would be from Porter Moser team, considering what they're known for. He was known for defensively at Loyola Chicago. But as I said in the Creighton video, these non-conference games are incredibly, incredibly important. The Big Ten is stinking this year. Like Thursday night, Minnesota blew an absolute monstrous lead to Missouri, and that was a game the Big Ten, and not that Minnesota is great or anything, but like there's an opportunity for a win over an SEC team. They can potentially help Minnesota, their net ranking down the road, where maybe that might make Minnesota a respectable win come the end of the year. And they blow that opportunity. It's like there's another blown opportunity for the Big Ten against a power conference team. And Michigan, who actually had gotten off to a good start, beating teams like St. John's pretty soundly in the Garden. Like Michigan loses to Long Beach State. And Long Beach State, in fairness, looks like a really good mid-major team, so I don't want to go too hard after Michigan, but at the same time, it's like it's a home game against a mid-major. You should probably win that game. And you're giving up 90-plus points. What is that? That's something I would honestly expect from a bad Iowa performance where we give up like way too many points versus the mid-major. And Iowa doesn't even lose that many games to mid-majors, although we did last year versus Eastern Illinois, so I guess I shouldn't throw too many stones there. But still, like, man, the conference is just really not doing well in non-conference. And again, if this continues, there might not be that many quality opportunities in conference play as we're used to for Iowa. So, like, you look at the three really important non-conference games remaining. These two games in San Diego and in the Iowa State road game, like, you don't want to say, like, you don't want to put a number, but it honestly feels like we need to get two of those games in some way. And I think that's possible. I think we can beat Oklahoma. Oklahoma will be favored based on KenPom, but I think Iowa can win that game. And USC, the main thing about USC is it'd be interesting their health because they're missing two of their most important guards when they lost to UC Irvine at home. It was UC Irvine, I believe. And they didn't have much guard depth, from what I understand, USC coming into the year, so missing those guards was really important for them in that game. And if those guys come back, Boogie Ellis is a contender for Pac-12 Player of the Year, and he was missing that game. So, but like you just like look at these opportunities in San Diego, and it's like, because you don't really want to feel like you have to go in Hilton and win. Like we all know how it goes. That's a really tough ask. That's a really tough ask, and you don't want to feel like you have to do that. So these games in San Diego are incredibly important. it feels like games where if you really want to start building a resume where you don't have to rely upon winning games in the Big Ten, it really feels like you have to start doing your damage now. And I think Iowa's capable, and it'll be interesting to see. And hopefully they can pull it off. But I think that's really off to say. I'll see y'all later.